My guest today in Live on Live is General Dominique Trinquand, who's a former head of the French military mission to the United Nations. Thank you for speaking to RFI English today.
Good morning.
Now, the battle to liberate Mosul is in its third week. IS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has released a recorded message saying that he's confident of victory. Sounds like typical propaganda, perhaps a rally cry, as the city battle is set to begin. Now the Iraqi forces are advancing on the built-up areas of Mosul after liberating the surrounding villages. Urban warfare lies ahead. Just how is the battle set to change now?
Going back to the victory, it's interesting. It depends what you mean by victory. Al-Baghdadi probably means victory by the fact that the coalition will not win within a week. Meaning that if in 1 month or 2 months you still have fighting inside the city, it will be a victory for him. Doesn't mean that he will still be in Mosul, but the jihadists want to fight the battle inside Mosul. As you said, an urban battle is a very a very difficult thing, where specifically in Mosul, why? For different reasons. First, because a lot of the head of jihadists are coming from Mosul, so they know very well the city. They've got their family, they cover their tribes inside, that's the first point. Second point is that Mosul is an old city. The western part of Mosul, the west side of the bank of the river, is an old city where armored tanks and armored personnel carrier will not be able to move because the streets are very narrow. So the combat will be an infantry combat, a very difficult combat. And where, of course, the coalition will not use airstrikes in the old city because they don't want to do the same as the Russian and the Syrian government is doing in Aleppo. You can't criticize what is done in Aleppo and do it in Mosul. So in fact, the jihadists have got many cards in their hands. They know the city. The city is built in order to provide a lot of hides, a lot of different way of defending the city, and so the coalition will win. I'm pretty sure they will win.
It's a
but
question
it will
of
take time.
So going forward, what sort of resistance can we expect from the Islamic State fighters?
They will use several means. First, small, narrow streets, very easy to defend, where you put booby traps, you put mines, and then you kill a lot of soldiers. And one sniper can fire in a street and stop a company. That's the first thing they will use. Secondly, they will use the population in two ways. The population, their family, will help them. They've got tunnels everywhere, so they can move inside or under the city easily. And the second part of the population, which is not on the jihadist side, will be used as the human shield. And you will have people in the streets, and so fighters from the Iraqi or the Peshmerga will not be able to fire because there will be population in the streets.
Now, there's been the addition of the elite troops, the counter-terrorism forces. Can you tell us a little bit about these elite forces? Some of them have battle scars from Fallujah, from Ramadi. Some of them are quite young. I mean, how ready are they?
Yeah, we must go back 2 years ago when Mosul was taken by the jihadists. At that time, the Iraqi army just disbanded and left all the equipment in the hand of the jihadists. And then for 2 years, you had the American, the British, the Canadian, the German, the French, who trained the Iraqi forces. And they were devoted to a unit, and the counter-terrorist unit were trained specifically by the American and the French. And their equipment is made of very light equipment, and they are the best able to fight in small city like that. So they are young soldiers, but all armies are young. I mean, the soldier, look how the French, US and British soldiers are very young. They are under 25. lot of the soldier. And so they have been trained for 2 years to fight that type of battle.
Sure.
And when you've got young soldier also, you've got the enthusiasm with them. And you need that to fight a battle like the Battle of Mosul.
We've seen a quite effective cooperation between the Peshmerga and the ISF, something that's the Iraqi Special Forces. And this is clearly essential given that both of these forces have been taking the lead in the front lines in the Mosul offensive. But just how enthusiastic and how strong has their cooperation been?
So in tactical term, soldier to soldier, it could be good. In political term, it's a bit difficult. Just remember that 2 years ago, when the Iraqi forces disbanded, the only one who were able to fight were the Peshmerga. The Kurds are a very good soldier, and they were able to fight. And they were very close to Mosul for 2 years. And they've been the people who defended the Christian, who left La Vallée de Ninive. And so they are probably the soldier the closest with the special forces from the Iraqi forces, because they've used the same type of way of fighting. But now, because we are close from Mosul, and Mosul is very close from the Kurdish side, you've heard that the Kurdish government, which is currently autonomous but not independent in Iraq, have said that after the Battle of Mosul, they will ask for a vote for the independence of Kurdistan. So this is a problem for the Iraqi government, not for the soldier, but for the government.
For the government.
And so probably you've seen that the Kurds were the first one to advance close to Mosul, and then they stop, because probably there is a discussion. Will the Kurdish, the Peshmerga, will go inside Mosul? That's not sure. It's a Sunni city, and it's a bit difficult for the Kurdish to be there inside the city.
And that's exactly the point I want to pick up on, because before the Islamic State swept into Mosul in 2014, there were already quite strong sectarian tensions. Mosul has a Sunni majority. The Iraqi forces are mostly Shiite. On top of this, Shiite militias have been allowed to take part in the battle surrounding Mosul. Is there a danger of more sectarian unrest as the Sunni inhabitants of Mosul are met by their Shiite liberators?
Yeah, you're right. There is a danger, and this is where the Iraqi government must show its victory, not only in military terms, but in political terms. Mosul is very important because it's a Sunni city, very close to the Kurdish side, and with a lot of Shia, part of the Iraqi army. And you've got a strong Christian minority also. So this is where the Iraqi government must show that he will reunify the old Iraq with Sunni, Shiite, Kurds and Christian. So that's why in the battle it's very, very difficult to, for example, you're talking about the Shiite militia. Currently they are west of the city. They will not go inside the city, but they will stop the jihadists to go from Mosul to Raqqa in Syria. So that's their main objective.
A blocking role.
Yeah, exactly. So that's very important, because if they go inside the city, it will be difficult. Remember, 2 years ago, when the jihadists arrived in Mosul, they were welcome. Why? Because the governor inside Mosul was such a disaster that all the prices were climbing, and after the jihadists arriving, the price went back to a normal state. And for a lot of the Sunni inside the city, they say, now we've got people who are taking care of us. Of course, after 2 years of extremists the Salafists are perhaps not so welcome, but initially they were welcome. And so the government of Iraq had a lot to do in order to have a political victory in Mosul.
Yeah, the stories you hear from the people escaping Mosul about life under the Islamic State show that it didn't last for very long,
Yeah.
this idea of being liberated from a Shia country, a Shia government. I did want to ask you, though, how important are the Shia militia to this battle? You mentioned they weren't going into Mosul itself, and they're in the wider sort of Nineveh region, where there are some very important Islamic State hideouts.
Yeah, let's be careful. The Shia militia are not, the aim is not for them to come in, but the Iraqi army is made of a lot of Shiite anyway. So this is where there is a problem, and we don't know exactly what part the Sunni tribes will play in that battle, because Mosul. We're not talking only of a 2-year story, but Mosul, when Saddam Hussein was president, a lot of the head of the army were coming from Mosul, from the intelligence system and all that. That's why the Islamic State came so quickly and so easily in Mosul. So once more, we must be very careful of the fact that Mosul is not only the second city in Iraq, it's the first Sunni city in Iraq. And that's where, and very close to the border of Kurdistan. So this is where we've got to, once more, the Iraqi political aim is to rebuild a state, which is not easy.
Let's look at Turkey's role or non-role in all of this. Iraq is worried about having its sovereignty violated by including Turkish forces in the battle. It's upset that Turkey's deployed troops at the Bashika military base. That's 8 kilometres outside of Mosul, an area which was once part of the Ottoman Empire. Can you explain to us why it's so important for Turkey to have a military presence in northern Iraq, and why Iraq is so opposed?
As you said, it's part of history. The Ottoman Empire, Iraq and Syria were part of the Ottoman Empire. And it was just after the First World War that the British and the French decided to split that and to have a protectorate in this part when the Ottoman Empire was disbanded. Mr. Erdogan is back a bit on this history, but you've got a big problem. Because after the coup, he disbanded a big part of the head of the army. And I'm not sure that the Turkish army is so strong now, because he had to promote the NCO very quickly, because a lot of officers were put in jail. So he wants to show that Turkey, even with the internal problem they've got, have still a role to play in this crisis. And let's be very frank, he played a role for the 2 last year because he helped the jihadists. Because in Turkey, you had the hospital who were treating the jihadists. All the traffic of petrol, of cotton, of antiques were going through the border, 600 kilometers from border. So for 2 years, he was really helping the jihadists. Now he wants to stop them, to be part of the community, rebuilding the region, and to be part of the rebuild of this region. But everybody's very careful about what he's doing.
More of a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
Now, the Iraqi Prime Minister, Haider al-Abadi, he's demanding that Turkish troops leave. Turkey's already fired on some IS positions. Do you think that Iraq and Turkey could be heading for a war? Is there a danger of a war within a war that could perhaps damage the prospects for stabilizing Mosul after the battle?
This is where the U.S. are coming in. I mean, the U.S. are the Iraqi government is under the umbrella of the U.S. The link with the Turk is not so straightforward. I mean, they are part of NATO. They are a big ally in the region for the U.S. So that's where U.S. should play its role, trying to calm down on each side. But as far as Turkey, I'm not sure that the US have got really the hand of Mr. Erdogan. So this is where it could be difficult. But really, I can see only the US will play an arbitrary role between the Turks and the Iraqi people.
And just my final question, which is the all-important question of what happens when this is all over. Religious and it's very religiously and ethnically diverse, Mosul and the Nineveh region. re-establishing governance surely looms as the biggest challenge of the post-Islamic State period. Just how tough will this be?
It will be very difficult. You've got. We didn't talk about Iran. Of course, Iran is very important. Iran is supporting the Shiite militia, is supporting the Syrian government. So you've got this confrontation between Iran, Shiite, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Sunni, and within that you've got Iraq, which is currently Shiite, majority of Shiite, and in Syria, majority Sunni.
Right.
So
Iran, Iraq, Shiite. Yeah. You've got Sunni Mosul, Turkey, largely Sunni as well.
Yeah. So that's where it's very complex and very difficult. And for us, we can't understand why the Shiite and the Sunni can't talk to each other. But it's impossible. It's go back to Muhammad and his nephew, and they are still fighting on this line. And the Salafists, the Islamic States, are the worst people on that because they are going back to the beginning of Islam, and Saudi Arabia is part of it.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, General Dominique Trinquand, a former head of the French military mission to the United Nations. Thank you so much for speaking to Paris Live PM.
Thank you. Bye.